Hi, welcome to Four Corners. This is Youth Corner Jeunesse. My name is Melissa, and I'm here with Jean-Philippe and Patrick Denis. And your role
in the police department?
Right.
Well, I'm the chief of police. I've been chief for five and a half years now, almost 6. And I've been here with the police force for almost 30 years.
Nice, that's a long time in
here. Yeah, I know.
Moi, je suis en charge de la division des enquêtes et la division des relations avec la communauté.
Nice. Welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.
So Youth Corner Jeunesse is a bilingual space. The aim is to connect individuals, young francophones, English speakers, immigrants, and First Nations with an aim to develop their leadership skills. They do this by expressing themselves and sharing thoughts and feelings that matter to them and impact their lives. So the theme today is the relation between youth and the policing system. So I'm going to ask you a few questions. First being, tell us a little bit more about your career.
Well, like I said, I went to John Abbott College in police technology back in the day. Graduated from the police academy in Nicolette in 1993 and started working for the police department of Deux-Montagnes in 1994. So,
wow,
yeah,
long time
ago. Yeah, back when you guys were all really just thoughts of your parents. But I started policing these streets back then, and obviously as a young cop, the link that I had with the young people of Deux-Montagnes and Saint-Martin-sur-le-Lac back then was really important. And that's, growing up in sports is always something I emphasized on. I thought it was really important that the police officers were close to the young population and make sure that whoever I could meet in the parks and on the streets, and I could really rely on them, and they could rely on me if there was something else also.
Which is important for them to see that you're human too, and like that human aspect of you.
Exactly.
In order to relate. So that's
exactly.
Very cool.
It's always important to see police officers that work with you, that are there for you, they're not against you.
Right, right. Especially today, I feel like there's always
the clashes there,
animosity too. So it's good.
Exactly.
Do you have anything that you would like to add?
Non, je peux ajouter, moi, ça fait 23 ans que je suis policier, mais je suis originaire de Québec. Cependant, là, ce qui m'intéressait dans le corps de police de Deux-Montagnes, c'était une petite communauté, où les voisins se connaissent, des choses comme ça. Puis c'est ça qui m'appelait à avoir un plus petit service de police, à échelle plus humaine, plutôt qu'un gros service de police. Donc, c'est la raison pour laquelle je suis ici là, depuis 21 ans maintenant.
Nice. And clearly you guys like what you do. You've been doing it for a while.
Well, we believe that this is the nicest job that anybody can have, c'est le meilleur métier. We try to, push the young people toward this line of work and get more people involved in it. And we have to love what we do. When we love what you do, you're not working. You're just having fun.
Exactly. Can you tell us a little bit more about the mission and the territory served by?
Well, obviously the mission of our service is the same mission as every police service in Quebec. It's like the serve and protect, basically. We're here to make sure that our citizens are safe, live in a secure environment, that we're here for them. We're here to prevent crime, obviously, and to arrest people that commit it and bring them to court. That being said, everybody wants to live in a safe environment and be able to do whatever they want to do and not feel that they're threatened by anything like that.
Right.
So that's what our main mission is. Our territory here, it covers 4 towns, the town of Two Mountains, Saint-Martin-sur-le-Lac, Pointe-Calumet, and Saint-Joseph-du-Lac. So we cover these 4 cities. We've been doing so since 1997, basically, where we covered these 4 towns. That's the year I was born. Yeah, there you go. So that's when it started.
Nice.
So yeah.
Interesting. Are there any police officers coming from, that you're hiring, that are coming from visible minorities within the community?
Yeah. Well, we have one at the moment of Egyptian background.
Nice.
But that's the only one we have at the moment.
Okay.
We have we've had some in the past of Haitian descent, of Asian descent, of obviously European descent, like Greeks, Italians, and stuff like that. Right. But at the moment, the only one we have within our department works in investigations, so he works under Jean-Philippe, is of Egyptian descent.
Nice.
Yeah.
What do you do to like promote this inclusion within visible minorities to gain, you know?
Yeah, pas de problème. En fait, c'est qu'avec le ministère de la Sécurité du public, il y a un programme qui a été mis en place récemment pour favoriser l'accès au métier de policier aux gens de minorités visibles. Donc, nous, évidemment, à la Régie de police du lac des Deux-Montagnes, on fait partie de ce programme-là qui fait en sorte que quelqu'un pourrait accéder plus rapidement via ce qu'il appelle une attestation d'études collégiales. Donc, ça se fait en 2 ans. Donc, quelqu'un pourrait appliquer au service de police. Si on fait l'entrevue, on l'accepte. À ce moment-là, il peut être accepté dans ce programme-là, devenir policier en 2 ans et venir travailler chez nous par la suite.
Nice. Nice.
So that requires that they don't have to go do the police technology program, which is 3 years. So a lot of times they'll just look at the background of the person and sort of bring him into the program. And we, as a police department, just give him like a promise to employ them, and then they go through that. You know, Jean-Philippe is the person in charge at our department of recruiting. So it's something that he's looking into quite often.
Wow, interesting. And you mentioned John Abbott. Is that like the closest school?
Well, it's the only Anglophone CEGEP in Quebec that offers police technology. It's offered also at various other CEGEPs in Montreal. There's Maisonneuve and Ahuntsic that offer the program also. But there's also like in Gatineau, in Drummondville, in Quebec City, in Saguenay that offer a program like that.
Right, right. So you mentioned before the mission is to serve and protect. Do you have any other examples of services that you might give to the community, like schools, high schools, preschools?
Je peux répondre parce que je m'occupe peut-être de cette division-là. Donc, évidemment, servir, protéger, c'est la mission de base du service de police. Cependant, nous, on a décidé de mettre l'accent sur un petit peu le rapprochement avec la communauté. C'est pour cette raison-là qu'on a un département, il y a seulement 3 policiers qui s'occupent de ça, qui s'occupent des écoles, qui s'occupent des camps de jour, écoles secondaires, primaires, les camps de jour, toutes les activités socio-communautaires. Donc, nous, on élargit un petit peu notre mandat, notre action, en ayant des policiers qui sont facilement accessibles aux gens, qui peuvent pouvoir leur poser des questions, leur parler de situations problématiques. Des fois, se rendre au poste de police, ça peut être intimidant pour parler avec un policier. Alors, si tu envoies un à l'école à tous les jours, que tu es capable de saluer, de développer une petite relation de confiance avec ce policier-là, mais des fois, ça peut être plus facile de l'approcher pour lui parler de situations problématiques. Donc, nous, à la Régie, ça fait partie du service élargi là, qu'on offre là, à notre population.
Nice. I remember when I was in high school, what was it, Mr. Harding?
Exactly.
Yeah, I don't know. Thank you.
He's still with us.
He's still, I remember him. He would go to LTM a lot, and he was like he was really liked amongst all like the kids, all the students. So
yeah, we have an officer that's in LTM like once a week. He spends the whole day there.
Nice.
We have also like in Polyvalent Deux-Montagnes and in Saint Marthe also. So we try to be there as much as we can because obviously, like you said, you get to grow a little interaction with them and build something with the officer.
Like a relationship, like
so it works with the confidence towards policing and vice versa. And sometimes as a young person, you don't know, you have something that's difficult that you're living, you don't know how to deal with it, and you just need an adult and somebody that you have confidence in that can help you go through it and make you sort of get through it and get the right answers for it. So.
Right. So on a more, I guess, serious note, what are the current security issues that are impacting this region that you've noted?
Well, the security issues are just like anywhere else. Obviously, our youth is the same youth that's everywhere else. So they're going through little phases of intimidation, you know, a lot of stuff online that's happening. So we see that also. And what's good about the 2000s approach is like everybody talks to each other. So all the police departments work together. So when there's a good idea somewhere, we would take it back here also. A few years ago, St. Jerome Police developed a little strategy to sort of address sexting, if you can. So like intimate pictures that are being sent to people, and then they get distributed without consent of the person that is on the picture. So obviously that's a criminal infraction, and with their approach, we can handle those situations a lot quicker than if we just deal with it as a normal criminal complaint. The schools are all formed with it. They all have the same training as we do. So when that happens in the school, they can handle it right away. So that makes it a lot easier for everybody, the victims, the people that are involved. You don't have to wait like a lot of months to find out what's happening. So those things happen here. Obviously, drugs, like anywhere else, you know, intimidation, online, either fraud or cybersecurity. We deal with those things everywhere else. We try to do conferences in schools with our officers on those subjects in particular.
And like mentioning the schools, there's a lot of like bullying online or in schools. What do you do to face bullying? Because I feel like a lot of kids are faced with or experiencing bullying, and they don't know what steps to take, or either the principal or whoever is in charge is just brushing them off and not taking it. So what do you do to face those experiences?
Ce qu'on a développé au fil des années, c'est un partenariat avec les gens qui travaillent à l'école. Donc, plutôt que simplement traiter le dossier au niveau policier, notre policier dans les écoles va intervenir avec, par exemple, les psycho-éducatrices, les TES, les directions d'école, puis on va essayer souvent de faire une médiation, parce que souvent, la situation, ça part d'une toute petite chose, ça prend beaucoup d'ampleur. C'est pas toujours nécessairement criminel. Donc, on n'a pas toujours un pouvoir d'intervenir en matière criminelle. Cependant, on fait une conciliation, une médiation entre les personnes impliquées, les TES, les psychoèdes, et puis ça permet souvent de régler la situation très rapidement, puis ça fait en sorte que le jeune peut continuer d'avoir un cheminement scolaire régulier, puis pouvoir concentrer sur ses études plutôt que toujours craindre de se faire bully justement à l'autobus, à l'école.
Yeah, the buses are ridiculous. I feel like especially the bus drivers, they have a lot going on.
They don't want to get involved.
That
and,
too.
You know,
yeah, because I remember being on the bus and it was like silent.
Yeah.
There was nothing, and now kids are
It's not like that anymore.
crazy. Yeah.
But we try to intervene in those situations because sometimes it's not illegal.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean it's really moral. So it might be illegal, but not immoral. So you know, that line is still out there. But in order for everybody to feel confident in what they do, and like Jean-Philippe was saying, it's important to have a good environment to learn. So you're in the school to learn, and if you're not in a safe environment, well, the situation is not proper for you to learn. So we try to be really present in that and intervene as much as possible with all the school's professionals so that we could make it, you know, safer and in a good environment for everybody.
Right. So what are the most common interventions with related to youth and alcohol abuse?
Well, obviously, you know, we've been young before, so parties are really fun. Everybody goes through that. And sometimes it happens that people will skip school just to improvise a party, you know, a chilling or whatever you call it now. So that happens that we intervene with those, you know. Obviously, it doesn't go to a really bad extent most often. It's not dangerous or anything like that, but it's happened where we've had to bring young people to the hospital because they were so badly intoxicated from alcohol and other stuff and drugs and stuff like that, that it was scary for their health, you know. So we intervene in those situations most of the when it's on the parties and stuff like that. A lot of times it doesn't go to the, you know, the intoxication extent or stuff like that. So we try to make them feel like, you know, it's okay. You're not feeling well right now. We'll call somebody, your family. We'll get you in, you know, get back home. And obviously we try to bring that approach to make them understand where, you know, you'll always test your limits and stuff like that. But you need to know when to stop and what the extent is, so that you don't get in a state that you're losing control over yourself. Right. You know, so that's dangerous. It's dangerous for what you're going to do, not to get yourself into trouble, but it's also dangerous what other people might do to you. If you're a young girl and you're intoxicated and stuff like that, well, you know, you have to be in a safe environment. You never know what's going to happen, so you got to be careful.
Yeah, it's scary out there.
Yeah.
I have basically the same question, but in terms of like hard drugs within our community, what are the actions that the police do to like reduce, I guess, the consumption?
Obviously, we investigate everything, all the information that we have towards hard drugs. We take that very seriously, especially when it touches the young crowd.
Right.
You know, like ecstasy, MDMA, stuff like that. We take those things very seriously. We do like the conferences we do in high schools. Well, we'll address those situations. What dependencies can be brought from it, what people, how can they can sort of start depending on drugs, and where it can bring them into like a lot of trouble and lose a lot of money from it, and get everything that's happened with that. So we try to teach our students that way.
So you go in
we do prevention basically in the schools.
Okay, yeah, that's what, like the harm reduction.
Exactly.
Yeah, because there's a lot of kids get into it and they're not educated on like, and especially with like amphetamines in the Montreal area, like speed and Molly or like
whatever. Yeah.
It's very prevalent.
Yeah.
And especially they're not like, they're mixed with like fentanyl, and there's been a lot of like cases on, like at least I've heard. Yeah. So I think it's really important to at least bring awareness and education.
But it's also important to say that it's not it's present in our territory, in our sector, obviously, like everywhere else, but it's not a bad situation where we see a lot of it. You know? It's good to advise people that it's present, it's out there, be aware of it. Don't go to that aspect, because you never know what people are going to put into it. Obviously, it's not a pharmacist that makes them.
Right.
It's somebody on the bad side of the line, so you don't know what he's going to put into it.
Right.
That's pretty much it. Yeah.
How can you, let's say someone's dependent on like these drugs, how could you I know like the goal is not to do drugs, right? Don't stay in school, don't do drugs, but how to do this responsibly, or to be more responsible, and to start taking action to, I guess.
Yeah, well, a lot of times we work with community organizations like Four Corners and others, where when we see there's a problem, we'll try to bring the person that's sort of over consuming or under a lot of intoxication or problems or dependence. We try to bring them towards people that can help them, to sort of kick the habit and get out of it. We have a social worker that works with us now directly at the police department. So she's able to sort of get into a different direction with people than we could as police officers. So a lot of times that helps also. We work in the mental aspect of the problem of the society, but also like dependence on drugs and stuff like that. We can intervene, because it's going to kick back somewhere else eventually down the road, when somebody starts consuming too much, or every day doing coke or doing MDMA or ecstasy or stuff like that. It's going to affect their way, their behavior, and we're going to bump into them.
They don't often realize it's like something that's seen as like fun at first, and then it just kind of is this slippery slope. Could you explain us the steps that we could follow in terms of when young people are victims of domestic violence?
Absolument. Donc, au niveau des jeunes victimes, les étapes à suivre, évidemment, nous, on encourage toujours le signalement aux services policiers. C'est la première étape là, de l'intervention qu'on peut faire. Donc, appeler les policiers. Les policiers vont se présenter, vont rencontrer la victime, vont rencontrer les témoins. Écouter un petit peu qu'est-ce qui s'est passé, puis ensuite de ça, déterminer les meilleures actions à suivre dans une plainte de violence conjugale comme ça, ou domestic violence. On va rencontrer la victime, on va prendre sa version. Ensuite de ça, on va rencontrer l'autre partie, on va procéder à l'arrestation de l'autre partie. Et en ce moment-là, on va toujours libérer la personne avec des conditions. Donc, ce qu'on veut, nous, c'est assurer évidemment la sécurité de la victime. Donc, l'agresseur va être arrêté par les policiers, rencontré, interrogé. Et puis, au moment d'être remis en liberté, il va y avoir des conditions de ne pas entrer en contact avec la victime, de ne pas se présenter à son lieu de travail, à son domicile. Donc, c'est un petit peu comme ça qu'une plainte de violence conjugale se fait. Et Patrick parlait là, de notre travailleuse sociale un petit peu plus tôt, et aussi impliquée beaucoup dans les cas de violence conjugale. Donc, notre travailleuse sociale va parfois référer autant la victime que l'agresseur vers des organismes qui peuvent lui venir en aide, soit pour contrôler l'agressivité, pour se reconstruire une confiance, pour se... donc voilà, c'est comme ça qu'on intervient dans ce type de dossier-là.
We use the same angle pretty much on sexual assaults.
Right, that was my next.
That's your next question. I can see it coming in your eyes that you're thinking about it, and also in family violence. Sometimes it's not necessarily between husband and wife or boyfriend girlfriend. Sometimes it's within the family, you know, between brothers and sisters or with the parents and stuff like that. So all those situations, the sexual assaults, the domestic violence, is all handled by people that have a specific training in our investigations department. So they deal with the complainants. Sometimes they deal with youth protection also, and they'll deal directly with the Crown prosecutors in St. Jerome to make sure that we go about it in the safest avenue for the victim as possible. Right. So we'll always implicate the victim in our decisions. So the victim will know exactly what's going on, and it sort of reassures them also at the same time to know what's going on. What's the legal aspect of it? How does the judicial system work? What am I gonna be needed to do eventually if I press charges against somebody? So a lot of times those are the questions that nag over somebody before they start deciding to press charges or not. So our officers are all formed on that, and they'll deal with the victims to make sure that we handle them the best way that they can.
Right. And how, I'm curious, how do you approach a victim, especially because like you are men. So if a woman or even another man was abused by someone, I imagine that it could be pretty intimidating to have to face that. How do you approach this, or what are your strategies to make them feel, I guess, more at ease as much as possible, obviously, but...
L'important, c'est toujours de faire ressortir le côté humain, le côté empathique. Et puis, quand les premiers contacts avec la victime, ce ne sera pas des questions de police. Ce ne sera pas « raconte-moi l'histoire » tout de suite. On va prendre le temps d'établir un lien de confiance. On va parler de nous, on va poser des questions. Et puis, c'est comme ça qu'on réussit à établir un lien avec la victime qui fait en sorte que on s'occupe de ses besoins pour commencer à elle. As-tu besoin d'aller à l'hôpital? As-tu besoin de quelqu'un soit avec toi? Est-ce qu'il y a quelqu'un qui peut venir t'aider? Qu'est-ce qu'on peut faire pour toi? Puis, une fois que l'environnement est établi, que le lien de confiance est fait, à ce moment-là, on va passer à l'autre étape plus du processus policier. Puis tout ce qu'on a fait auparavant, ça va beaucoup nous aider dans notre processus.
Yeah, because I feel like a lot of people are scared to even, like, a lot of it goes unnoticed because they don't say anything about it.
No, that's it.
So because it's a pretty scary situation.
Yeah, the anxiety level goes up, right? It's just the same as when you're about to do an interview.
Right, and you're re-traumatizing the person.
Definitely. And one good thing that we have in our department, I'm sorry, GP, we have like 60% of our detectives that are female detectives.
Nice. Wow. Nice.
Yeah. So
idea.
sometimes it helps because, like you said, being a woman, you don't really you're scared of talking about what happened. You don't want to get into details. It's private matter. So doing it with a male detective, sometimes it's hard, but a lot of times it's female detectives that handle it. So it puts our victims at ease a little bit in that sense.
Nice.
And you said something interesting, like it's hard to tell the story. So the way it works, the process of the whole investigation is we're trying to make the victim tell the story the less time possible,
Right.
You don't have to come to the station, tell your story to the police officer that's there, and then repeat it to the detective, and then repeat it again. So the way it works is we're focusing on the detectives. You tell the story one time, so you don't have to go through it, too many times.
Yeah. 50 times or stuff like that. And then once you tell it at the police station, that's it. And then the next time you'll have to tell it, most likely will be at a trial, if that goes that way, So it's sort of easier on the victim, like you're saying, that not to have to repeat it too often.
Yeah, no, because especially I'm coming from a place of like social work, and I know that like a lot of the times we're re-traumatizing our clients or our patients, which is inevitable, but it's sad. It's hard to see.
And and when we work with like youth protection in certain dossiers, well, the youth protection officer will be with us, doing the interview almost together. So we'll deal with the questions that they need answered, and we'll ask them. And so the victim, sometimes it could be a young child, will not have to do it and go through that situation again. It'll be a one-shot deal where we do the interview with the social worker, and all the answers are covered, all bases are covered, basically.
Right. I have a question on, let's say you've experienced something, you've gone to the police, and the police, you feel, hasn't dealt with the situation justly, or what are the steps that you could take if you feel like your needs aren't being met by the police? Okay.
Well, as of a few years ago, the government passed a new law where it protects victims in a certain sense, where the victims can, every organization has to have a system where there's like a complaint possibility for victims if they're not satisfied with the outcome. So in that way, sometimes officers, they can't go a certain way because legally, well, we don't have all the information, or the criteria are not met before we can bring a file to court or something like that. And some of the victims don't see it that way because what they've lived is an ordeal for them.
Right.
And, for technical matter, they don't understand why we can't go about it. So there's a way where we can sit down, explain the situation, go through it, see if something was missed on the officer's side. It could happen, like we were saying before. All the officers are human beings, so sometimes they're not perfect, they're not robots. They'll understand something certain way where it wasn't meant to be said that way, so it's not the real situation. So we'll look at it at a different view and maybe go towards and solving it differently. There's also la déontologie policière that's out there, so anybody that's not satisfied with the way a police officer conducts himself can, make a complaint with the déontologie. It's online. You don't have to speak to anybody. You can just write your complaint and send it, and then eventually somebody will get back to you and see what can be done and how away. And with the déontologie, there's a mediation side of it that's not necessarily just to get the officer a blame or something like that. It's just give the victim and the officer an opportunity to explain themselves and how they feel.
Yeah,
so sometimes
which is important.
Sometimes that's the only thing that's needed to make something go better,
Right. Cool. So let's talk about racial profiling. Does the policing system have a code on how to proceed with these visible communities? Yeah,
well, we have different procedures and internal procedures that are sort of oriented with the province's procedures, obviously, that deal with all types of interventions where police officers will intervene with people. Obviously, there's racial profiling. There's also criminal profiling, and sometimes that gets all mixed up. So where it's a little difficult, and sometimes it's perceived a certain way. So I can definitely understand where somebody from like a racial background cannot feel the same way as somebody, a white young kid that grew up in the West Island like myself, and that hasn't dealt with that or hasn't lived that in their past. So we've put out certain procedures to make sure that all our officers handle themselves a certain way when that's gone about. And les pratiques policières in Quebec require us that we have to collect certain information to send it to them. Since a few years ago, they've started this program where we have to maintain certain things that we can't intervene anymore, and some other things. Well, we have to let them know on how many occasions it's happened that we've asked people for their names and from what racial background they are and stuff like that.
Right.
So, obviously, officers will not go about it to investigate upon race, upon gender, upon your sexual orientation or your religion or anything like that. They intervene for particular reasons. The officers swear that they'll protect the society, so they're trying to do it that way. But sometimes it is not perceived in that situation. So we need to and make sure that they understand. There's a lot of communications that need to be done in that situation, obviously, and like we were saying before, when we can talk to each other and explain to each other why we're doing things, a lot of times it helps in that sense.
Yeah. So when a young person is stopped by a police officer, what are his or her rights? Do the police always have like an obligation to take their ID card?
Well, it's not an obligation. The only time a young person or any person basically is has to give their ID is when they're committing an infraction.
Okay.
So when an officer stops somebody because they've committed an infraction, either for a municipal bylaw, for a highway code infraction, or a criminal law, well, then you have to identify yourself. And the officer has the right to stop you, identify yourself, and then there's certain avenues legally that needs to be handled afterwards. So basically, but there's a lot of situations where the officers will not ask for ID. Basically, you know, there's a lot of interventions in community relations. Like on Canada Day, we'll have a tent in the park. We'll meet hundreds of people that day, will not ask for their ID. You know, we'll just be there talking to everybody and explaining what needs to be done and doing prevention, and that's just fine. In other situation, well, let's say like right now, there's a lot of cars being stolen since about a year ago. It's gone up, and there's a lot of cars that are stolen. So obviously, the officers that are working overnight, if they see cars that are targeted, usually circulating, well, they might stop them and ask for ID of the people inside to make sure the car is not stolen. Okay. You know, so in that aspect, at that time, they're sort of in criminal information gathering mode. So it's not, they haven't committed an infraction, or it's not proven they've committed an infraction yet, but the officers are definitely working in prevention in that measure. So that's why sometimes it's important. So if you're a young person and an officer stops you and starts asking, answer the questions, you know, you might not have to identify yourself, but you have nothing to hide. Right. You haven't done anything wrong. Well, in that sense, I always think it's better to explain yourself, to identify yourself, and then you'll be on your way a lot quicker than when you start resisting and start arguing. Yeah,
because you see that a lot on media too, like the back and forth, like so it's like, I feel like I guess the easiest way is to just like hear, like, you know.
It's always the easiest way, but you know, the officer will explain the reason why they're stopping the person in that sense, most likely.
So thank you for being a part of the podcast. Is there anything that you would like to add?
We'd just like to thank you for the invitation. I mean, it's really a big privilege for us to be here and to reach all the guys and girls that you're reaching out every day. So we feel it's a great opportunity for us, and we'll definitely more willing to come back if ever you need us.
Right. Yes. No, just to like, I think it's important to just see you guys and see how you are, and to connect with you on different aspects, and to learn more on what to do when you have an issue or where to go.
Exactly. Yeah. That's, if everybody knows what to do and how to handle themselves in certain situations, well, everything will go a lot smoother, for sure.
Right.
Absolument. J'ajouterais, évidemment, merci beaucoup de l'invitation. Et puis, il y a un message qu'on pourrait transmettre à tout le monde. Tous les policiers sont devenus policiers parce qu'ils aimaient aider les gens, ils aimaient le contact avec la population. Donc, vous voyez un policier quelque part dans un parc, dans une école, en auto de patrouille, vous êtes en vélo, peu importe, gênez-vous pas, vous pouvez l'aborder, lui poser des questions, lui parler. On est des gens qui aiment ça, parler avec la population, donc gênez-vous jamais si vous avez des questions.
It's funny you mentioned that. I feel like every time I'm driving and I see a cop, I'm like, like I have to drive properly.
Stress level.
I'm like, okay, they're turning, I'm going straight. All right, well, thank you.
Right,
thank you very much.
Thank you, thanks a lot.
So thank you for your attention. Don't forget to subscribe to Youth Korner Jeunesse on YouTube. Also, we have our publications on the Four Corners Facebook page. Remember, you could also find us on Spotify, Anchor, Amazon Music, and Google Podcasts. Finally, Youth Korner Jeunesse is a project created by Four Corners Laurentian Community Network. So we receive funding. These funders are the RDN, the Regional Development Network, the Canadian Heritage and the Secretary for Relations with the English-speaking Quebecers. Thank you for tuning in.